Time to begin the regular meeting of the Committee of the Whole. It is Wednesday, November 16th, 2022. I call this meeting to order. The first item is approval of the agenda, and if there are no changes or corrections, we don't need to take a vote. We can just
Madam Chair.
Yes, please.
You can't really take any actions until you have a quorum.
Oh, of course, we can't take any action.
So you can do the information items,
Okay.
and then you have to wait on the business item as well.
Can we assume that the agenda is? Oh,
Sure.
No, that's short. We're still, okay.
No, we don't need a vote.
All right, so we don't need a vote, we don't need anything at this, we're gonna mix things up a little bit tonight, so if you're paying attention, that'll be good. We're gonna move directly into the information item. We have one information item tonight, it's the Climate Action Plan presentation and discussion, presented by Lisa Barajas, Director of Community Development. Welcome, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, council members. It's good to be in front of you tonight. It's been my pleasure to speak with you all many times over the last several weeks. So today I just wanted to give you a high-level report out on what we've heard so far and some of the proposed revisions that you can expect to see when we bring the plan forward to you in December for your adoption. I won't walk through any specific redlining or anything yet today because we did just talk with you all last week at committee. So there's a lot of staff working right now at their desks, working on different revisions, getting things in order and such. But I wanted to share some high-level discussion with you today. See if I can get this. Sometimes this is sleepy. There we go. And then it goes fast. So just as a reminder, the purpose of our Climate Action Work Plan is really to build on our existing climate work at the council and to unify our efforts across all of our divisions. A lot of work has been done over the last, more than 15 years since I've joined the council to improve our energy efficiency, to improve our recycling, to reduce our energy footprint overall. A number of different activities in a number of different divisions here at the council, but really recognizing that we go further, faster when we're doing that together. This Climate Action Work Plan defines the council's commitments, our strategies, and then the actions we'll take to implement those over the next 3 to 5 years. So a much shorter time horizon than I think we're typically used to operating under, the 25 to 30-year time horizon that I'm most regularly in. But that shorter time horizon, because this is an operational and action-oriented plan for what we do every day in decisions that we're making every day in the delivery of our services and in the management of our buildings and our facilities and construction of new facilities as we're moving towards those. So you're not meant to read this slide, but really meant to share with you. As we had shared earlier, we've engaged with peer agencies on our work, really trying to learn from what others have done in the region and get their input and advice from a government perspective in particular. What are other governments doing to manage their assets? How are others managing the different types of similar facilities that they own and operate as well? What can we learn from one another, and how can we partner together? And of course, a number of different environmental thought leaders and organizations within the region that are also interested in our work. We regularly hear from them in all of our work on the issue of climate and climate change and environmental sustainability. So really opening up the doors to work together on different actions. And then of course, our committees where we've had discussion as well. So generally, and I'm just going to provide some themes around what we've heard from everybody, but really, as we've shared previously, just a strong eagerness for collaboration, especially from our peer agencies around how we can do things together, how we can convene and discuss more often some of our shared pain points and how we can address those together. We heard a lot from many, both council members and agencies and nonprofit organizations around our approach to environmental justice and a lot of support for continuing that work, not just within our climate action plan, but in our implementation and as we continue doing additional work in the region. Of course, there was a lot of shared enthusiasm for actions that are related to adaptation, not just mitigation. While mitigation is important and one of obviously drivers of change, our emissions in the region, but folks recognizing that we are already experiencing climate impacts today on the ground, whether that is flooding of our existing facilities that aren't even in river channels, or extreme heat events that are impeding the ability for us to carry out our operations effectively on a regular basis, or other issues that we are already seeing on a regular, day to day, and not sometime 10 or 20 years in the future. There was a lot of appreciation for recognizing that we have work to do today to address our existing infrastructure and assets that we own. We had just some general questions on how things were going. What's the status of that plan? Are you going to electrify faster? Some of those just general kind of tactical sort of questions across, actually that was probably more a pretty common question across our agencies and nonprofit groups. So just more updates on status of how those conversations were going. We did receive suggestions for improvements for how we address energy efficiency, how we do calculations around cost benefit, different considerations that we might want to use. Some folks are more in the weeds, or so even have suggestions for certain protocols than others. So a whole range of things, but also at a higher level, considerations around, what do you consider a cost and what do you consider a benefit? At a more philosophical level about how we should approach that. So a full range of comments there. So we were looking at incorporating a lot of those suggestions into this work and addressing that as part of the Climate Action Plan as well. And then of course, how we will measure our progress and report what sort of metrics we might use. We had both questions and also suggestions for how to approach different areas. And certainly, as we've discussed here, reporting is an important part of such, especially a work plan that is so short in time nature, that we're able to track both what we've accomplished, but also what impact we're having to the extent that we can. So we have some, overall, some high-level proposed revisions that we'll do. We're proposing to revise, and we discussed this a bit in some of our committees, revising our the priorities column that's within our actions matrix, just to ensure that we're using a consistent approach across all of those. I know there were some questions too about how we define those priorities, so we've spent a little bit of time there. You'll see revisions in the final draft that really explain that whole high impact and that whole matrix that goes along with that and how those relate. So really ensuring that consistency across how we characterize those actions, ensuring that we're actually categorizing them the same across that work. We also have work to identify sort of the sequencing of actions. So there's a certain group of those actions that are actually enabling. We kind of have to do those first in order for others to make sense. So you'll see that as one of the elements in the final plan as well, where we've identified those enabling or foundational actions. And then we also will be just reviewing and ensuring we got all those timelines right on the actions that we have in that matrix as well, that the start and end dates are realistic. We have to do a little bit of shifting here and there. But as we've continued to review, not just with you all and our external partners, but as we've continued to do additional review. I know when you're in it and you're drafting, it all makes sense, and then you take a little bit of time away from it, you go back and look at it, you're like, that doesn't make sense. I need to do a little bit of tweaking here. So not really anything significant, but really more just ensuring that the plan itself reads together well, that we're all using that consistently, especially amongst the staff team who will be responsible for implementation, that we're using this in the same manner. And to that extent, we've also, our same point, we'll re-examine the characterization of staffing and funding requirements for each of those actions. We have a little bit of a different approach in some of our divisions for how we address those. So we, again, working toward that consistency of what does it mean to be staffed or not staffed or assigned, and just making sure that we've applied those definitions appropriately there. We heard from folks too who are very interested in the environmental justice section, but wanted to see more of that narrative up front. We had some discussion in sort of the definitions and glossary section, so just some probably more formatting than text issues there. And one of the elements that we discussed as well was ensuring that we've flagged all of the actions in the matrix that we think also require an environmental justice lens at the point of implementation. While we reviewed it at the planning stage, there is certain approaches that will need to be taken into consideration when we're actually carrying out that action, and how we do it is just as important as how we've assessed it up front. And then finally, adding a discussion on cost analysis and the importance of service reliability as part of how we make decisions around the different types of mitigation or adaptation actions that we use, to the point I think Councilmember Wolf, you were making about ensuring that we're not losing one element at the cost of, or losing reliability or increasing costs toward a singular focus, but providing a complete picture of the pros and cons as we're working through both project development and cost analysis, but also when we're bringing decisions in front of you as a body, that you're seeing that complete picture as well. As part of engagement around transportation, so MTS being Metropolitan Transportation Service actions, these are the actions that MTS would be leading. And as part of the engagement around those strategies, hearing from partners, particularly in the region, that certain elements we hadn't quite captured in our actions that we thought would make sense to include here as well. So those are the elements that you'll see here. These are all actions that MTS would lead, but certainly would have partnership with others across the council as well, and really help set the stage for some of our 2050 work. And that includes developing greenhouse gas measures for regional solicitation, so really incorporating some of that into our grant making efforts. And then developing and providing options for the council and TAB for inclusion of greenhouse gas emissions reductions in the project funding process for regional solicitation, evaluating and reporting emissions impacts as part of the transportation improvement plan, our program. And I'm sure you all, as you hear about public comments on the tip, we regularly hear about, what are you doing about climate? So this is in response not just to our climate action plan, but what we've regularly heard from the public as we were putting out some of our work in that regard. We've also spent a lot of time talking about travel demand management. It's something that we have an office that does already, but certainly as part of just our overall management of the transportation system, but really thinking about leading that policy development and funding of programs in our region to really expand upon travel demand management, including implementing some of the recommendations of the TDM study. And then finally continuing to work with MnDOT and transportation partners that create a framework for allocating funds that come out of this carbon reduction program. That's a federal program that I'm not gonna pretend to know about, but I know I've got some transportation partners in the room. I know it's a pretty sizable pot of dollars as well, but certainly when we have the opportunity to convene and collaborate, I think sitting at that higher strategy level, that this strategy fits right within that convene and collaborate, especially around federal funding sources. And then to the metrics piece and performance management, we have started, and this is just an illustration or example of how we would put together metrics at the commitment level. We recognize that a lot of actions on their own may not be a driver of any particular metric that you can do, like we have to do it, we're gonna do this study. And so there's gonna be a qualitative, yep, we did the study, but what did it lead to? Or how did these things together lead to other impacts, maybe at the strategy level or at the higher commitment level. So what you'll see here is we've, just as an example, put together a matrix, if you will, of both a groupings of mitigation, adaptation measures, as well as environmental justice measures. And some of those, depending on the commitment or the strategy, some of the metrics may be more on the qualitative side, and while others may be more on the quantitative side. We really want to recognize that some of our work isn't going to lend itself to, well, we got 10% difference in this, or that we were able to increase something by a certain amount, that it's going to be more that it may be a narrative about how we engaged or who we engaged with, or it might be more of a a narrative around studies that we've completed or partnerships that we've gained along the way that have helped us to support other work. But of course, where we do have the ability to measure, we will be measuring and providing those measurements for you. The highest, the easiest, and most obvious is around our greenhouse gas emissions, but certainly there are other metrics that we may consider as well. Energy cost savings, and other sort of savings that we might gain from different adaptation measures we might make. So we've been beginning our conversations with Phil Welljesper around risk management and how adaptation measures might be something that we can include as part of our risk management, and how we can measure that and report that to you as well. So I just gave you a whole lot, and I know it's not the full plan, but I wanted to give you a lead in on what you can expect to see when we come back to you in December. We will be posting the week before December 14th meeting that revised draft for you for your adoption on the 14th. But certainly want to open it to you if there's anything missing, or if you had questions or other thoughts, since I was last, or our colleagues were last in front of you to discuss at different committees, or other thoughts that you wanted to share that you hadn't previously shared. So thank you, I really appreciate your time.
That was a lot of information, thank you very much. Are there comments, questions? Anything missing? Councilmember Lindstrom?
I'll just say I really appreciate all of the comments at the committee meetings. I feel like we've had more tour dates than the Rolling Stones in the last month. Do the Rolling Stones still tour? I don't even know. Dating myself, but I really do appreciate Councilmember Wolf, your comments on affordability and reliability, and Councilmember Chambliss, your comments about climate change overall, and that there are short-term costs and long-term costs of doing nothing. And Vice Chair Cummings, your comments at Transportation Committee about looking into solar, and if there's opportunities around there, and I could go right around the room, and you can talk about the comments that people made who are not here, but rest assured that we have been listening and taking notes, as you can tell, and that those comments will be reflected in the final product.
Other comments, questions? This was a great presentation. It is a lot of information. However, as Councilmember Lindstrom said, we've been talking about it throughout committee work and over the year, and to kind of see this come together and understand how it's woven into all of the work that the council does is really exciting, especially with a pretty condensed time frame. So let's put the pedal to the metal and implement these things and move forward. I think that's just super important, and I think that's been reflected in so much. And Councilmember Lindstrom, thank you for all the work that you do in this realm. It's a lot, and I think that it's safe to say that we all depend on you and your insight, and you've done so much work, and you've been really a leader in all of this, so that's much appreciated, as well as to staff. Thank you. Very good. So, any other comments, questions?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Sorry, I shouldn't speak after the chair, but I just wanted to add my thanks to the work you've done and the whole team throughout the organization, and the thoughtful and thorough way that you brought to us through committees, so we have time to kind of ponder it and to make comments. I've made the same comment in every committee I've seen in, about just seeing sort of environmental justice defined and performance measures sort of throughout. That's what our commitment is, and I see that.
Yeah.
So I'm really grateful to see our input reflected in this report and adjournment product. So thanks.
Thank you for that. Yes. Thank you. Do you have what you need from us, do you think?
I do. I just
Comments,
want to give you the next steps here. Committee of the Whole today, we will be reviewing a final draft with the climate work group on November 30th, making sure we've crossed all the T's and done all of the I's before we post in the week after for council for your final adoption. So really appreciate all of your thoughts and comments, and again, can't thank our staff team enough. Really the spreadsheets behind what go into making this presentation, short and simple, is amazing. So if you ever want to see the details, we're happy to share them. Or if you have a specific question about, well, how did we address this comment? We're happy to get that for you as well, because we have been tracking both. What was the comment and what did we do with it, type of thing. So certainly if there are other questions that come up, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to answer those. So thank you so much.
Thank you. We're gonna move back now, we have a quorum, so we will go back
Well,
to.
you're the quorum maker.
Our quorum maker
Sounds
has
good as a deal
arrived. Did anyone have any changes to the agenda? If not, we can move on.
Kind of
So,
too late now anyway, so.
it is a little bit late,
You
yes.
did have to.
Okay, so moving on to the minutes. So I need a motion and a second to approve the minutes of October 5 Committee of the Whole. Is there a motion?
Go ahead,
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
and I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We have one business item, and it's unusual for that to be taken up at a committee of the whole, but I have a statement to read that allows us to do this. We have one business item today, and pursuant to its bylaws of the council may consider a time-critical business item on a committee of the whole meeting agenda when the item requires timely action by the council's governing body. The council will consider and take formal action on this business item at this committee of the whole meeting. The business item includes a report from the Transportation Committee for business item 2022-294, same week. And I will turn it over to Councilmember Chambliss.
Thank you, Madam Chair, council members. Business item number 2022-294 is regarding an amendment to the 2023-2026 Transportation Improvement Program to increase the scope of its Highway 36 Reconstruction project. This item is brought today as an exigent business item requiring timely action at the request of MnDOT so that the project can make its scheduled letting date for bids and avoid cost increases and schedule delays. This TIP amendment request is to increase the total project cost from $3,372,000 to $4,367,000 and increase the length from 0.2 miles to 1.25 miles. This amendment also adds a retaining wall to the project scope. Therefore, Madam Chair, I move that the Metropolitan Council adopt an amendment to the 2023-2026 Transportation Improvement Program TIP to change the termini and add a retaining wall and increase the cost for its Highway 36 ramp reconstruction project. And at this time, I will entertain any questions.
Are there any questions? Councilmember Wolf?
Is this the spot that floods all the time and are we fixing that?
That's a good question. Let's see if there's anyone in the audience who has the answer to that. Is this the area that floods?
Madam Chair, Charles Carlson, Executive Director, NTS. Councilmember Wolf, I'm unable to answer that question. It's certainly something we can follow up on. This is really addressing a ramp and then creating a retaining wall as an additional scope item.
Well, it says it does some drainage things too, and I just wondered.
It very well may address that, and it's something we can follow up around with the community.
Thank you. Good question. You're really paying attention. Keep us all on our toes, that's great. Okay, so there is a motion on the floor, is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you, and thank you for sparing that item for us, we appreciate that. Seeing that is the end of our business, unless anyone has something that they want to bring up. All right, I think we are good, and
Sorry.
Mr. Lee,
You got here just in time for us
the
to get
motion is
done.
adjourned, the meeting is adjourned.
Good timing. We needed a quorum for a while, Chad. Bill hadn't